Okay, so talking about the three major branches of evidence. The first one, we have the fossil record. So the second big sort of strand of evidence is structural evidence. Structural evidence has sort of an A and a B component. An A we talked about, not at sign, A. Silly Moser. Well, what kind of structures? The first kind of structural evidence that we see are same shape, different species. Home, ET phone home. No, that's not it. Homologous structures. I know that's what you were saying, but I'm entitled to give you a little bit of grief. Homologous structures are sort of the first chunk of that structural evidence. What's the second chunk of structural evidence? Yeah, vestigial structures. And it's the word I can never, ever spell correctly the first time, so I'm going to try really hard. Vestigial. I always want to leave out that second I. Vestigial structures. So vestigial structures, those things that are evidence of evolutionary past, but they're reduced very often. They don't serve a real purpose in a modern species. So the third line of evidence is what we're going to talk about today. The third line of evidence. Do you know what a molecule is? You had physical science. What's a molecule? Little thingy, tiny. There are molecules in the air all around us. There are molecules in your body. Yeah. They're collections of atoms. So they're the smallest unit of a particular chemical. And this third sort of large strand of evidence is often called molecular evidence. That's what your book calls it. I'm going to simplify that and just call it chemical evidence. So the third strand is chemical evidence. Okay? How many of you have ever watched anything like CSI? Or, NCIS, whatever. Any of those shows. They're solving a crime. They go look for trace evidence. They swab the scene for all kinds of chemicals. They take it back to a super sophisticated lab, and they can run all kinds of analysis. They're looking for chemical evidence that shows them who was at the scene, whose blood it is, who the person whose blood that is related to, any of those things. The chemical evidence we look at when we look at the theory of evolution is not much different, honestly. Oops. So this is the first piece of chemical evidence for evolution. I wasn't recording. So every living thing we know uses DNA. Bananas, bacteria, blue whales, mice, you, your dog, a mouse. Oh, I mentioned mice. Rats, chipmunks, earthworms, crickets, fireflies, maple trees, dandelions, daffodils. Did I mention onions? Did I mention potatoes? Peas, beans, lettuce. DNA. And I once had, this was another adult, and this was an adult professional, but who was not who didn't have a science background, and they said something about, extracting DNA from bananas, because we'll do that in here. We'll actually take DNA from a banana. And they said, well, really? Bananas have DNA? Yes. Well, but not like we do, right? Yes. Not like you could tell the individual plant, right? Not like you can figure out which banana tree murdered someone, right? Yes. They have individual DNA. One banana tree has different DNA than another banana tree. One lettuce plant has different DNA than another lettuce plant. Now, all the leaves on that plant have the same DNA. Just like if we take skin from your arm and skin from your big toe, it's got the same DNA. Different parts of the body. But all living things use DNA to transmit chemical or to transmit hereditary information. So the sort of first strand under that chemical evidence, if we're kind of making an outline here, is just that all living things use DNA. Neil deGrasse Tyson, who is this awesome physics guy, really smart guy, and he's an astrophysics guy, so he's interested in space. And he has said, you know, if we ever found life on another planet, the first thing we would want to know is, does it use DNA to transmit genetic information? Why would that be important? Because then we would start to think maybe there's a relationship between us and this other life form. Wouldn't it though? Wouldn't it though? I mean, you're related to all other living things on Earth. You are all related. Everybody in this room, we are all related. So that means something living left Earth. Something living what? Something living left Earth and live somewhere. Yeah, there's it goes two directions, that thought process. Remind me to talk about that at the very end, because it's a really interesting thought process, but I want to keep us on track. So we will talk about that. Okay, there's a part B for chemical evidence. So let's go look at part B. Part B lies in your genetic sequence. So you all know, let's see, most of you have, who here has at least one sibling? Okay. Who here has a cousin? Okay, good. So, who do you share more DNA with? Your sibling or your cousin? If we take a DNA sample from you and your sibling and you and your cousin. You and your sibling share more DNA. Why? You're more closely related. Your common ancestors are closer. Your parents are common ancestors. So you can go home and say to your sibling, hey, what do you say we wait until the common ancestors are distracted and then we could paint spots in the living room? I don't know what you want to do. I don't know what crazy thing you have in mind. But let's wait until the common ancestors are distracted. Let's wait until the common ancestors are taking a nap. Your siblings, I think, are weird. They might already. So you and your cousin have a common ancestor too. Who is your cousin? What common ancestor do you and your cousin share? First cousins, you share grandparents. You share a set of grandparents. So you and your first cousin have a common ancestor, but it's further in the past. The more similar your DNA is, what that tells us is the more recent that common ancestor is. You and your second cousin and you share a great-grandparent. Your third cousin and you share a great-great-grandparent. You get where this is going. More generations back. The more recent your common ancestor, the more DNA you tend to share. Now, what does your DNA determine about you? It determines if you have brown eyes or blue eyes. It determines if you have curly hair or straight hair. It determines if you have a long, skinny nose or a wide, flat nose. It determines the shape of your eyes. Is that all? No. Blood type? Oh, your blood type? Yeah, absolutely. If you're colorblind, if your blood clots correctly. Your DNA also has instructions for every cell in your body to reproduce. So let's do this. Let's make a list. So in your body, DNA tells cells how to reproduce. You get a cut, it heals because cells reproduced. DNA told your cells how to reproduce. DNA carries the instructions for your cells to reproduce. DNA tells your blood how to clot. By the way, the grammar on this is horrible. I apologize. DNA tells your body how to. Cells how to reproduce. Blood clot. Please ignore the grammar. Sorry. For your body, well, DNA tells your body, I don't know how to phrase that. DNA has instructions for, blood clotting, cell reproduction. For your particular body, as you were forming in a uterus somewhere, DNA said, 2 arms, 2 legs, 1 head, please. DNA also said 2 eyes, 1 nose, 1 mouth. DNA had the instructions to build a set of lungs that have 2 lobes. DNA had the instructions to build a 4-chambered heart. DNA had the instructions to put together a skeleton, including, remember that arm thing we talked about? Long bone, 2 skinny bones, bunch of little bones, long bones. DNA had the instructions for making bones to begin with. Not everything has bones. DNA had all those instructions. It's not just if your eyes are blue or your eyes are brown or, you have 3 wisdom teeth or 4. Every single thing about you was dictated by the DNA that you got. So let's look at these things. So for you, DNA said 2 arms, 2 legs, 1 head. Did a chimp's DNA say the same thing? Yeah. 2 arms, 2 legs, 1 head, 4 limbs, 1 head. Your DNA said 4-chambered heart that pumps blood. Did a chimp's DNA say the same thing? Yeah. Your DNA said 2 eyes, 1 nose, 1 mouth. Did a chimp's DNA say the same thing? Yeah. Did a chimp's DNA have the same instructions for cell reproduction so that a chimp can heal a cut? Yeah. Blood clotting? Yeah. Same instructions to get 2-lobed lungs? Yeah. Same instructions to build a skeleton? Yeah. Very similar instructions to make the bones of the arms and the legs. You and a chimp share 99% of your DNA. So let's talk about how much DNA you share with another human being. Okay? Because we're used to, and you've seen the like Maury Povich, Who's Your Daddy, and they compare DNA, and hold on. So, the people on this side of the picture are, they're Native Africans. The group used to be called Pygmies. I'm not sure what term they prefer these days. Very often groups have adopted like a word in their own language that they have always used for themselves. A very tall person from this ethnic group, like a very tall male, might be 5 feet tall. You would all be giants. Like these, a short adult from this ethnic group might be 3.5 feet tall. A very tall person might be 5 feet tall. They're very, very short, very stout, very sort of broad chests, thick-limbed. Very different, right? So then we have, for comparison, where'd she go? A Danish supermodel of some sort. This woman might be 6'2". And also, these Native Africans have very dark skin, very dark hair, very dark eyes. Okay? This Danish supermodel, 6'2", blonde hair, blue eyes, long, skinny limbs. Long, lean features in her face. Those 2 humans share, how much DNA do you think they share? We can tell them apart with a DNA test. If these 2 people both commit a crime and leave their blood at the scene, we can tell who's who. What do you think? Oops. So, all these humans and you and any other human we would care to put in here share about 99.999% DNA. You and every other human on the planet, regardless of race, religion, national origin, sexual orientation, gender identity, webbed toes, not webbed toes, gap teeth, not gap teeth, curly hair, straight hair, blue eyes, green eyes, purple eyes, gray eyes, brown eyes. You share almost all of your DNA with every other human on this planet. When we talk about the family of humanity, we're not kidding. We're really not kidding. Holy cow, you are really related to every other human on this planet. There is a very biological basis to talking about the human family. I think that's kind of deep in an outside science sense. It's kind of deep in a, like, wow, okay. Yeah. No matter how different someone else may seem from you, we have more in common than we don't as humans. We want the same things. We want love and security and safety and, we want all the same stuff. We don't always agree about how to get it or what the good stuff is, but yeah, you share. So a difference of, get rid of that, a difference of 0.001% in DNA gets you that kind of difference. Not a lot of difference. Humans share a lot of DNA. So yeah, I mean, humans share most of their DNA because you're sharing all the genes that allow things like blood clotting, cell reproduction, 2 arms, 2 legs, 1 head, 2 eyes, 1 nose, 1 mouth, 2 ears, inner ear shaped like this. No, not fur all over, fur on the head, fur on the crotch, fur on the pits. I mean, you're sharing all those genes. You're sharing all the genes for how to construct a spinal column, for how to attach the ribs to the spinal column. You're sharing all those genes with every other human on the planet. So, going back to what you share with other species. So what makes a primate mostly? It's this. Everybody stick your thumb up in the air. You can say A if you want to. This makes you pretty darn special. That opposable thumb. You can grab stuff. That allows primates to use tools in ways that other species can't. Primates include us, they include gorillas, they include chimpanzees, they include orangutans, they include those cute little capuchins that always end up on TV sitcoms because they're adorable and they're this big and they are people's pets. Those are all primate species. And primate species have a lot in common. They're all mammals, of course. They all nurse their young. They all have fur.
Please excuse the interruption.
Okay, so you and a chimp both have instructions for fur, 2 arms, 2 legs, 1 head, 2 eyes, 1 nose, 1 mouth, belly button, instructions to replicate with a uterus, a placenta, and an umbilical cord, instructions for blood clotting. You share a lot with a chimp. Now, what about a mouse? What do you share with a mouse? No, they do not have an opposable thumb. But they have 5 digits. They have 5 little feet, 5 little fingers, rather. They have teeth. We have teeth. They have fur. We have fur. They have 2 eyes, 1 nose, 1 mouth. They have a spine. They have a tail. We don't have a tail. We have a tail bone. We have the little remnant. Man, would it be cool if you could have, I want a tail. I've always wanted a tail my whole life. Big, long tail that I can grab things with. My whole life I've wanted a tail. Anyway, not going to happen. So, we share a lot with a mouse. Mice are mammals. Mice have the genes to nurse their young. Mice have the genes to reproduce using a uterus and a placenta. They're a placental mammal. Mice have that 2 arms, 2 legs thing, except they're all legs because they're... Okay, so you and that mouse share a lot of genes. You're both mammals. You and a fruit fly, what do you share? Eyes. 2 eyes. What else? Well, they don't really have a nose. Their system's a little bit different for that. They don't really share the same kind of facial arrangement that we do, and their mouths are very different than ours. They have bristles. Yes, they do have hair.
They do have legs.
But they have 6 of them. They don't have the 2 and 2 plan. No, insects have 6 legs. That's what makes them insects. They reproduce. They have eggs and sperm. Their cells are capable of reproduction. Now, do they produce with a uterus? No, they lay eggs out in the world someplace, those eggs hatch. Do flies nurse their young? No, they're not mammals. They lay their eggs, their babies grow up, they never see them again. They don't share those genes with us. But just the basics. They have blood. They have muscles. They have genes that show their body how to make a muscle. They have flight muscles. Just those genes get us a 60% share. I think the figure with you and a banana is about 25%, which is one of my favorite science t-shirts. You share 25% of your genes with a banana. Get over yourself. I love that. Okay, we will pick this up tomorrow.